Good day to you all, and welcome to lesson 2 of our topic development. Now, last lesson we discussed about some important terminologies that we use in development, and then I gave you a series of homework to attempt. So now we're going to look at the correction of the homework activity. We start with the lesson. We'll correct the homework activity we did last time in lesson 1. Number 1, I asked you to give the name of other types of development. 2, using map 1, how will you classify Seychelles and Mauritius? 3, apart from Brazil and Taiwan, give 2 examples of NICs. And 4, how is GNP calculated? Now, the 5th one is a fill in the blanks, but let us look at the answers for these 4 and then we move on to the fill in the blanks. So, for the first one, when I asked you to give the name of 2 other types of development, you could have given me urban development, rural development, political and cultural development, and any other development which again it's in that we use it also when we are discussing about development. 2, using map 1, how will you classify Seychelles and Mauritius? And the answer is very good, LEDCs. And apart from Brazil, Taiwan, give 2 examples of NICs. So I've given you, if you have on the list here, then you can give yourself a tick. India, China, Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, Turkey, and Philippines. So these ones are the what we call NICs, and remember last time what are NICs? Yes, very good, they are the newly industrialized countries. How is GNP calculated? Anyone? What answer did you give? Yeah, but let us look. There is one official formula that we follow where we say GNP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X plus Z. Now these letters, C, we are talking about consumption expenditure. I, we are talking about investment. G, we are talking about government expenditure. X, we are talking about the net exports, and the net exports, we take the value of the imports and we minus from the value of the exports. So imports, what we bring in to the country, and exports, what we take out of the country, like what we send abroad to sell, like our tuna. And Z, net income. Net income inflow from abroad minus net income outflow to foreign countries. For example, when we say net income inflow from abroad, we can get directly from tourism industry when they come in, either getting on our plane, buying a ticket, or even when they come into our hotel to stay in our hotels, and the different activities that they pay. So we get this inflow, net income, and the outflow when we are buying, when we are getting income, we are taking this income out of the country to foreign countries. For example, foreigners working in Seychelles and then sending money abroad. Or even when we have our students studying overseas and we are sending money overseas for them. And the 5th question, where we had to fill in the blanks with appropriate words, we had to use our own words. So we are given a table where we have type, so where we have to pick the type of countries and examples of countries, and descriptions. So I gave you one description, and I see Taiwan here, and the description is they have experienced rapid industrial, social, and economic growth since the 1960s. Okay, so we start with MEDCs. MEDCs. which are the more economically developing countries. Very good. So the country here is USA, and I asked you for another country, so you can give me any countries, if you use your map 1, any countries that are shaded, yes, highlighted gray or red on map 1. Okay, so any countries. So it's gray, so make sure you see the map clearly. All right, so next to USA you have Canada, very good. You have Alaska, you have in Russia, okay, and Australia. They are the most developed description, they are the most developed countries and have high standards of living. So if you wrote anything close to that, you can give yourself a tick. Okay, so they are the most developed. The word developed should be there in your the descriptions, and high standard of living. These are the 2 keywords. Next one, Taiwan, very good. Then Taiwan is an NIC. It's a newly industrialized country. And any country is highlighted in blue. There's not much. If you look at map 1, there's not much of these countries, but those ones are the ones that are newly industrialized countries, newly industrialized. And the description is already there. They have experienced rapid industrial, social, and economic growth since the 1960s. Okay. And the last one, yes, it's supposed to be LEDC, the less economically developed countries. So Sudan, I gave you an example, and you can pick out any countries highlighted in green or light green on your map 1. And you can see here on the map, most of the countries in Africa and a big chunk also over Asia is highlighted green, which means these are the less economically developed countries. Okay, so for Africa, except for South Africa, most of them are the LEDCs. So description for LEDCs, they are at a lower stage of development and have a lower quality of life compared to your MEDCs earlier. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe how the influence of those factors stated below can give an indication of development of a country. So we are talking about GNP per capita, population growth, energy consumption, access to housing, health and education, employment versus unemployment, nutrition and diet, agricultural products and levels of mechanization, and imports, exports. How can GNP per capita give an indication of development of a country? As stated in our homework, the formula for GNP is as follows. GNP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X plus Z, where C is consumption expenditure, and consumption expenditure also is known as the consumer spending and consumption. So the consumers, when we go to the shop, we are spending, so we fall under, it falls under that one. Investment, government expenditure, X is net exports, I explained earlier, and net income also I explained earlier. So income is any form of payment, either coming in, the inflow, or going out, which is the outflow. And however, and therefore GNP also per capita, this is GNP, but GNP per capita is a country's GNP divided by its total population or by its population. Therefore, GNP per capita is a country's GNP divided by its population. So, GNP per capita is a country's GNP divided by its population. Per capita here means per person. This shows what part of a country's GNP each person would have if this GNP was divided equally. Knowing a country's GNP per capita is a good first step towards understanding the country's economic strengths and needs, as well as the general standard of living enjoyed by the average citizen. A country's GNP per capita tends to be closely linked with other indicators that measure the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the country and its people. For example, generally people living in countries with higher GNP per capita, we're talking mostly about the more economically developing countries, they tend to have longer life expectancies, higher literacy rates, better access to safe water, and lower infant mortality rates. How can population growth give an indication of development of a country? Population growth is known to be a crucial factor in the process of social and economic development. So here we are talking about population growth. In populations that are not equipped to make necessary technological and infrastructural changes, even moderate population growth can stop the development process. The adaptation of new technologies require time and money and other structural changes. Moreover, rapid population growth, of which can be seen especially in early cities, can lead to uncontrolled urbanization, leading to overcrowding, pollution, and crime, increase in food production, where the population pressure has led to overuse of arable land and its destruction, a disadvantaged economic development causing massive unemployment, destabilization of the quality of life of people, and we can see that the largest increase is projected in the sub-Saharan Africa at 1.1 billion. The current growth rate is 2.3%. Many countries in the LDCs would be better off with lower population growth and lower birth rates. A slower rate of growth can accelerate development. So these countries in the LDCs, if the rate of growth is decreased, then they can accelerate their development. So all the things we've discussed about uncontrolled urbanization, disadvantaged economic development, etc., these things can be improved. More on population growth. In the year 2100, our planet is expected to be the home of 10.9 billion people, of which accounts for more than 30% increase on today's population, of which is 7.7 billion. This increase is not spread evenly across the world. Why? Okay, let us do this little activity together. In most developed regions, what do you expect in regards to population growth? Very good. We expect a decline in population growth, such as Europe, okay, because they are developed regions and they have decreased their population growth, as we saw earlier. And East Asia. So it's not only in Europe but also in East Asia. We're talking about countries like Taiwan. We're talking about countries like South Korea, like Japan, so in East Asia. Or a slow population growth such as the Americas. So we are talking, here are the most developed regions, okay? The Americas, when we talk about the Americas, we are talking about the totality of North and South America. Okay, next we're going to see other influences that can give an indication to development of a country. So, for energy consumptions until import exports, we're going to see it in terms of a table, on a table. Okay, so you follow very carefully. Now, we take the first one, energy consumption. So we have characteristics. When we look at consumption, energy consumption, we see that as economy grows, it consumes more energy, and renewable energy will not keep up with demands. So there will be a need for more energy. Now, where is it more needed? If we look at LEDCs, there is a need for reliable and affordable energy. This is very fundamental. Energy supports expanded industry, modern agriculture, increased trade, and improved transportation. Whereas MEDCs, which are the more economically developing countries, like we say rich economies, they have higher income per capita levels, thus will have higher energy consumptions per capita. And energy enables products and services that enrich and extend life. Also, another point for MECDs, energy powers computers, transportation, communications, and cutting-edge medical equipment and more. So, from this one, we can see that in regards to energy consumption, the MEDCs are using more of energy in the world. Access to housing. Housing is one of the basic human needs, and housing matters in the development of a country. If we compare LEDCs and MEDCs, housing is often inadequate with no access to clean running water or electricity for the LEDCs. So, large areas of shanty towns consisting of poor built properties. These properties, poorly built properties, are found in around the cities in the LEDCs. It is estimated around 40% to 75% of the population in fast-growing cities is housed in squatter settlements without basic services. Okay, like we said, there is no access to clean running water, or even there is no electricity because they are not properly made houses. Whereas in MEDCs, housing is adequate for the majority of people, and most people have access to clean running water and electricity. And access to housing finance also is a bit easier in MECDs compared to LECDs. Next, we look at education. Education is a human right like the access to housing. It raises people's productivity, creativity, and promotes entrepreneurship and technological advances. It raises people's productivity, creativity, and promotes entrepreneurship and technological advances. A country's economy becomes more productive as the proportion of educated workers increases, since education workers are more efficient, especially when we look at tasks requiring literacy and critical thinking. Now, comparing education for LECDs and MECDs, remember LECDs are the less economically developing countries and MECDs are the more economically developing countries. So, LECDs, we see for education limited numbers of full-time education and few of students going on after 16 years of education, whereas for MECDs, the majority have full-time education and many have more than 16 years of education. So, they have university or even a degree or even masters or even PhDs. The quality of education is also a concern for LECDs. And many young people who have not been able to complete a quality education are lacking the foundational skills and high-level skills for work and life. Whereas in MECDs, they value engagement and accountability in their schools. They spend more money, right, like the budget. They spend more budget on education. They tend to incorporate technology into its education system. Like if we look at Japan, which is one of the MECDs, and it's one of the top 5 schools in the world, top 5 education system in the world, incorporating out of classroom education requiring extracurricular activities. So one of those, some of those high countries having high levels of education, they also, this is one of the things they are doing, they are incorporating a lot of extracurricular activities like Finland and also in Japan. Next one, I've put health, nutrition and diet together since they go well together. And when we're talking about these 3, countries with a weak health find it hard to achieve sustained growth. And economic evidence confirms that a 10% improvement in life expectancy at birth is associated with a rise in economic growth. Okay, so which means, and when we talk about improvement in life expectancy at birth, like remember you did population in S2, and when we talk about life expectancy at birth, it means improvement in life expectancy. It means a baby when it's born, by the time it is 1 year old, it survives and can grow up to become a healthy adult. So if there's this improvement in life expectancy at birth, then there is a rise in economic growth for that country. And when we look, we'll see which country, which of the type of countries here, there is this increase. So we compare LECDs and MECDs in regards to health. LECDs, we see high birth rate, 20 to 45 babies born per 1,000 people per year. Whereas in MECDs, we see low birth rate, 10 to 16 babies born per 1,000 per year. Okay, and then life expectancy is low due to poor medical care and quality of life in LECDs, whereas in MECDs, we see life expectancy is high due to good medical care and quality life. So that 10%, that improvement in life expectancy will tend to be with the MECDs. Also, when we look at death rate for the 2, we see that MECDs have a low death rate due to good health care compared to LECDs where the death rate is high, and this is due to poor health care and widespread disease. When we look at nutrition and diet now, staple food may not always be affordable as prices fluctuate, and people tend to make purchases based on nutritional needs and affordability. That is the situation for nutrition in LECDs. But when we look at MECDs, the cost of staple food is relatively cheap compared to LECDs, and most people make purchases not based on nutritional need and affordability, but based on taste and preference. When we look at diet now, the average calorie content per capita per day for the LECDs is 2,666 calories of food, and for the MECDs that figure is 3,314 calories. And for MECDs, an example for USA, we have 3,374 calories that we're calling per day of food for the Americans. And if we compare, if we take a country, we take Eritrea, for example, in Africa, an LECD, they take 1,512 calories per day of food. We move on to employment and unemployment. The more industrialized a country is, the more of its people will work in the tertiary or service sectors. So here we're talking about industries. When we talk about employment, the more industrialized the country is, the more the improvement in types of work. So when we talk about tertiary, like in industries, we're going to see that topic after development and trade. We saw at the beginning of lesson last week. When we talk about industries, we have the three types of industries. We have primary industry, secondary industry, and tertiary industry. Tertiary is for service like we see here, and then primary, we say like manufacturing, we say like mining, like fishing, agriculture. These are primary because we are extracting raw materials. And then secondary sectors, manufacturing. We take now this whatever we have got from the raw materials, for example fishing, we take this tuna and we take it to IoT, and then they are processed into canned tuna. So this is manufacturing. So this is the secondary. And then tertiary, in the shops, the shopkeepers are selling those canned tuna. So this is service. You understand? Okay. So we will understand more once we reach to that topic. But because we are talking about it now, I will just summarize. Okay. So if I continue with my explanation, so the more industrialized a country is, the more of its people will work in the tertiary sector, and fewer will work in primary and secondary sector. Okay? If we look at MEDCs, the tertiary sector dominates, like we have seen in the characteristics here. The tertiary dominates, so more people are working in the service industry in the more economically developed countries, and the primary and secondary sector is more mechanized and employs few people. So when the primary and secondary, so primary extracting materials, for example, instead of using somebody to plow the ground for farming, they can use machinery. So the machinery can replace like 10 to 15 guys, people to plow the land. So this is the one talk about machinery. And more mechanized, for example, in a factory, instead of getting people to process, to do certain processing, they can replace that activity by a machine. So the machine can be putting, assembling and all this instead of somebody physically doing the work. So that is the situation in MEDC. So less people are working in the, less people are employed in the primary and secondary sector. And also most people work in the tertiary sector. As we see here at the top, the tertiary sector dominates. So this is what it means. LEDCs now, LEDCs industrialization has not started yet, which means there is a very large primary sector. Also the country's, maybe it might also be the country's main export. So we are talking about fishing or agriculture, okay, plantation, any of these things where we are extracting the raw materials. So this is primary. There is a little manufacturing. So we are talking about the secondary sector as being still small. There is a fairly large tertiary sector providing mostly low-cost services. So we call it the informal economy. So they are not doing the higher level work like in the primary, in the more economically developing countries. Okay, and unemployment rates are higher in the LEDCs due to lack of developments of technology. Okay, we continue. Imports, exports. The price of primary products fluctuates on the world market. Workers and producers in LEDCs lose out when the price drops. Okay, and the price of manufacturing goods are steadier, therefore MEDCs will always benefit. If we compare LEDCs and MEDCs, LEDCs we say exports cheaper primary products. So they export, that means they, what comes out of their country, what they send away. For example, tea and coffee, they send to other countries. And they import, what do they import? Valuable manufactured goods such as electronics and cars. And if we look at that, it means that they have little purchasing power, making it difficult to pay off debts or escape poverty. Because what they are exporting, the value is less than what they are importing. So they will always be in deficit, in debts. Whereas the MEDCs, they usually export valuable manufactured goods. So they export it, they send to other countries. For example, electronic cars, like Japan, they export cars, your Jeeps, your small Kia or, okay. And then MACDs also, they import cheaper primary products. So what they import is less. So what they spend their money to get this thing into their country, they import is less than the export, which means they are making a surplus. And another thing, like in the characteristics we saw, is that the price of manufacturing goods are steadier. For example, the price of a car will be almost the same. So you won't find price dropping. Therefore, the MACDs will benefit. Whereas in LECDs, what do they export? They export tea, they export coffee, and this is on the world market. And sometimes the price, there might be a drop in prices. The price fluctuates, the prices of these products fluctuates because different countries also are producing tea and coffee, like Brazil, an example. So if it drops, then they will lose out. Next, we'll look at agricultural production and levels of mechanization. And we're going to see that agricultural sector plays a strategic role in the process of economic development of a country. If we look at LEDCs, LEDCs produces many of the world's raw materials and then sell them to MECDs at relatively low prices. Whereas MECDs, they use the products to manufacture high value goods which they can sell for great profit. Okay, so you can start thinking about along this line, what are the things that they get and then they manufacture. Okay. We move on. Now let us do some class activity. Here we have 3 questions. I'll give you 3 minutes to complete this question, and then together we'll give the answer. Okay, ready for the answers? Let's see. What type of industry dominates in an LEDC? And you have to give an example. Yes, very good. Primary industry. An example, you can give mining, you can give fishing, and you can also give farming as examples. Number 2, what type of industry dominates in an MEDC now, a more economically developed country? Very good. We say tertiary, or we say a service industry. Example, any example you can give: banking, information technology. Next, let us look at the fill in the blanks and let's see how many of you scored correctly. On the first slide, it should be the first line. MEDCs are countries which have a, yes, a high standard of living and a large GDP. Whereas LEDCs have a very good, a low standard of living with a much lower GDP. Now for the next lesson, you can start, you think about this, using your own words, explain how a slower rate of population growth can accelerate development. We've seen this earlier. I'll give you a hint. We say a slower rate of population growth. It means right now it is fast going. So which type of countries are we talking about? Okay? So what have we seen today? Today we have described the influences of the following factors that can give an indication for the development of a country. And we've seen all of them. Okay, next lesson we are going to see how GNP and HDI are two common indicators of development. GNP, we have discussed about it last lesson and also in this lesson particularly. And HDI, we are talking about the Human Development Index. And so you can start reading about it. And don't forget my question to work on it. Okay, I have now reached the end of lesson 2 for topic development. And thank you for your attention. Remember, students, to keep safe and follow the guidelines of the Ministry of Health, and we must keep protecting each other. And with that, I say goodbye and until next time.